the...
I love that.
You didn't get all of our multiple texts?
Good afternoon and welcome to the Board of Education working session for Weld County School District 6. We're glad if you're joining us online, and we'll start this work session the way that we always do with comments from board members, and we'll let Ms. Mueller go first.
Thank you very much. I don't have a lot to report other than I have had the opportunity to have a couple conversations with teachers in the district, and two of the biggest questions that came up or accolades that came up, appreciations, was that two of the teachers I spoke to had done parent-teacher conferences via Zoom this year. They were both high school teachers from Greeley West, and they said that they think even after the coronavirus, we should keep parent-teacher conferences on Zoom forever, because the parent attendance rate was so much higher than having it face-to-face, and it went really well and seamless, and they were able to meet with parents that in the past it was difficult for them to get to school for parent-teacher conferences. And so that was one thing I heard, that if we can say anything good's come out of this pandemic, that and that adjustment to a Zoom parent-teacher conference seemed to be working well for parents and for teachers. So that was good to hear. And then I also had some teachers that are concerned with the increasing case rate that we're seeing, that we may decide to go to a fully remote learning environment. And the biggest concern I was hearing was, teachers want to be in contact with their students for sure, and they're able to do that remotely, but having access to resources that are in their building. That was one of the questions I was hearing. One teacher was a science teacher, one teacher was a math teacher, so I can understand some of those concerns, but I wanted to let you know that that was their biggest concern, is if we have to go remote, is there any feasibility for teachers to be able to actually access their classroom and still teach from their classroom remotely to their students? And I said, I have no idea, but that I would convey that concern if we should have to go that way. But those are the only new things that have come up for me since our last meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. Mr. Hafley.
I would like to congratulate Ms. Crane for being the Health Nut of the Month for Nutritional Services. That is awesome. We're also delighted that you are feeling better. I was privileged to attend the flag raising ceremony and dedication with Mr. Talley and Mr. Matthews, and Ed Rogers, former art teacher at Greeley Central, did a great job of procuring the flagpole and the flag. And then Mr. Smith, the principal, did an eloquent job of celebrating the flag in the United States, and I thought it was nothing short of wonderful. And I'd like to thank the Success Foundation for their continued support via masks as well as thermometers. They are such an incredible ally for us that they can't be lauded enough.
Thank you, Mr. Hafley. Ms. Solis.
I just heard from community members just showing their support for the work that we've done around COVID in the district. And they just wish us well. They know the numbers are going up, so they'll be keeping an eye on things as far as what happens in the district, but really proud of the work that we've been doing and how well we've been able to manage things. And again, thank you to staff. And I think they're just really proud of us as a district for the way we've handled this and done this work. So,
Ms. Pappas.
So I was able to attend the virtual student rep council meeting last week. It was their first full meeting, and I just want to say a thank you and support for Dr. Insoon at Northridge. She is their sponsor, and she did such a great job of supporting Anuj, the president, as he was trying to manage doing a virtual meeting. That's pretty challenging, I think, for anyone, and she did a great job. He did as well. They are planning on coming to a board meeting, and I think they're excited about that. And they're also planning a virtual talent show. So I'm assuming that we'll get more information about that as well. So that was great. And then I also had the opportunity to go to a virtual SAC meeting at Dos Rios. And I was just impressed with the number of people that attended, but also the fact that they are in the process of figuring out how to remodel, use the money for Dos Rios. Kent was there as well, and your support in helping them kind of think about questions and guiding them to things they may or may not have thought about. But just the fact that people I think I get wrapped up in my own little COVID world or my own little home world, and just how hard people are working. Our teachers are working really hard. Facilities, the bond work, just a shout out to everybody that's just getting everything done during this pandemic. So thank you.
Mr. Talley.
First, want to say congratulations. I saw today on Facebook to Laura McCarty for her named the Colorado School Nurse Administrator of the Year. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. So congratulations on that. Also, hearing regarding the COVID numbers increasing, some community members, parents, teachers, I'm not sure exactly who they were, but they were just concerned sort of with that, and I believe we're getting an update on that tonight, so hopefully they're tuned in and they can listen to that and get their questions answered that they may have. Also I know it's only Monday, but want to say Happy Veterans Day to any veterans that are out there, with Veterans Day being on Wednesday. If it were up to me, every veteran would have Veterans Day off in America, so I really hope that happens sometime in our future, but I want to say thank you to all the veterans out there that do what they do and the love that they have for our country and the sacrifices that they have given to serve in armed forces.
Thank you, Mr. Talley. Ms. Mash.
I was our representative to the annual CASB Delegate Assembly, and it was all virtual. I think that CASB did a great job of managing. I think there were 87 participants. I've never been on a Zoom call quite that big, but there was, some tediousness just to getting everyone checked in, and a couple of times the voting apparatus maybe didn't work quite right. But overall, it was a really good. It was really good to continue to get to do that. I think you all received the email with the updates. Most every single thing that it went the way that we had, hoped. One thing that did not pass was revising the student enrollment count system, whether we have one day count or multiple day count. It sounded like there was just not an agreement on how that should be done. So that one didn't pass. So we'll have to kind of maybe revisit that, or I don't know if our board has ever submitted resolutions to CASB, but not in my 2 years. So if there's ever something that we feel really passionate about that we would like CASB to bring forward to the legislative session, it's our method of collective bargaining. If a large number of school districts feel strongly about something, then CASB can bring it forward saying, the Association of School Boards feels this is important, and I think it does carry a lot of weight. And then my daughter is fully remote these days, but on a positive note, I get to observe her classes a little bit when I'm home and see what a Zoom class looks like, and all of her teachers, and I am sure all of our teachers are just doing a great job, and there's a personal touch to it. My daughter's like, here's my cat, she's studying with me, and they do get to share a little bit about themselves, about their lives. I think it was for her biology class, they were talking about balance and neurophysics, I guess, but they all had to put as many books on their head as they could and stand in their living room, and so there's positives and negatives to each thing, but it's been kind of fun because since as a parent I can't go volunteer in the schools, it's been fun to see a little bit of what she's actually doing since it's in my living room.
Thank you, Ms.
Michael.
Mash.
Michael, could I say one more thing?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off if
That's
I did
okay.
before.
So I did want to convey that I heard from a lot of people that are really, really excited that we have a former teacher as our vice president coming up next year. So that's pretty exciting, I think, for us as in education, and just kind of wondering what that's going to look like and the changes that we might see for us as a district.
Thank you, Ms. Solis. And I don't have much to add. I think I would echo what Ms. Mueller started with, though. As a parent, that was absolutely wonderful to have Zoom meetings for conferences, especially for our high school students where you're seeing 5 and 6 teachers sometimes. That was as fast as we've ever been able to do conferences, and did it right from our living room table. And that's great that it's working for teachers, and I've heard that as well. So that's all that I have, I think. We are to quarterly calendar review, and as is the case so often these days, there's not a lot on our calendar besides our next board meeting. We do have CASB coming up for those who have signed up to attend that. But is there anything else besides our board meeting on December 14th?
I know that on the 13th, November 13th, is McAuliffe's STEM certification recognition, right? Yes, I believe so. So I don't think that's an event that is in person, but just to put it out there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Talley. Is there anything else, Dr. Pilch, do you know of? Okay.
So our next board meeting, we do not have a board meeting the week of Thanksgiving break.
No. Our next board meeting is in December 14th. So we have one more board meeting for 2020. And we'll be done with 2020. Any other, guys, before we move on to our next report? Hearing nothing. Our next item is our COVID-19 update. And for this, Dr. Pilch, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and I think Ms. Crane is managing slides for me on this. I do have a slideshow. You did not have it in advance. We were still updating data as late as 3 p.m. today. So, but I wanted to get you the latest information and give you an opportunity to have some dialogue. I appreciate those of you sharing that you have been hearing from community members with questions and just wondering as we are seeing an increase in COVID-19 cases. So I think we'll go ahead and get started with our slideshow. Mrs. Crane? Thank you. So I will first start with some good news. We put out the survey to parents, students in grades 4 through 12, and staff this past week, and that survey will close this Thursday, the 12th. So as you're hearing from staff or parents with questions and wonderings, make sure you remind them to complete this survey. There was a question about confidentiality, because the survey is intended to be confidential, but there was some question about, well, if I identify that I'm an online teacher and I'm at a specific school, there's only 2 of us, so I could be identified as who I am. And I know the confidentiality is so important, and I just want to say there's nobody going back and culling through this data to try to figure out who responded in what way. Really, we're trying to get a base of knowledge around the themes that are popping out around staff and students and parents as we go forward into the next several weeks and months. And then this past Saturday, several of our facility services folks and communications department, communications chief Teresa Myers and Ken Henson, assistant superintendent, organized a furniture giveaway. Some of the feedback we had received was that some of our students need desks and chairs and tables and bookcases to be able to work in their spaces at home. We have furniture that we were storing, waiting to dispose of, that came out of some of our furniture replacement that we are doing with a bond issue. And so we were able to give away 194 desks, 527 chairs, 37 tables, 35 bookshelves, 3 footstools, 1 locker, 3 cabinets, and 1 whiteboard. So, that was great. We were glad to do that. I think, like all the things we've done during our response to the pandemic, we learned some things about how we do that, but I'm glad to get some furniture out there. That came from feedback actually from Araceli Calderon, who, through working with some of the parents she's working with through BOCES, that there was a need for furniture, and so we said, hey, we've got furniture. We know how to get that out to people. So I do want to share that as of today, and as you heard Mrs. Mash say, Her daughter is fully remote at Central High School right now. So we do have 8 of our sites that are, 7 of our sites that are fully remote. I do want to say every single site is remote as a result of not having enough staff to run the operations of the school. None of these sites have an outbreak. Cases, as you'll see, even though we're seeing more, are still very, very low relatively compared to the numbers of students and staff we have in our district. But you can see the schools that have gone fully remote and the dates in which they do plan to return. We do have a couple of schools right now that we're watching really closely, that if one more cohort goes out at those schools, we'll very likely need to go remote. We are deploying district level staff from this building to help support in order to keep schools open. We've also deployed staff from some of the closed buildings to buildings that need support. So for example, Northridge High School, their night custodial crew was all quarantined. And so we have deployed some of the custodians from Greeley Central High School over to Northridge. I think some of the paraprofessionals we've deployed out to Heath Middle School to keep operations going at Heath. So, everybody is just doing everything they can, and, we're working hard to keep people working. So if we have hourly employees who can't work remotely, we want to make sure we can keep them working so we can keep paying them. And so folks are working hard to make that happen. So I'll share some good news with you first before I get into the nitty-gritty of some of the really hard work and hard information to see. We have 10 sites right now with no quarantines. And this is important, I think, because every meeting I have, people say, so when are we going to go remote? Shouldn't we all be remote? Because we are seeing an increase in cases, but we still have 10 sites with no one quarantined of our schools. We have 8 of our schools with only one cohort out right now quarantined. So a very small number in 18 of our sites. And then we have, which 18 is almost half of our sites, guys, that are being impacted in a really low level or no level at all. Our confirmed positive and probable cases are relatively low. We are seeing more cases, but they're still relatively low when you consider the number of students and staff we have in our district. Lots of activities are occurring for students and staff. I think those of you who have high school age children or secondary age children, you're enjoying perhaps your children being a part of band or choir or drama or football. Those have been very rewarding, I think, for students and for families, and have helped to give some normalcy. There is a downside to that, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. So as of today, at about 2 p.m., about noon, we had 55 cohorts quarantined from 30 different campuses. This is over 1,700 students. So lots of students are in quarantine right now. I want to remind you all, most of those cases, almost all of them, are not children who are sick or staff who are sick. They are folks who have been quarantined because they're part of a cohort where there was one positive or one probable case, and they were possibly exposed. So just to show you in comparison, last month, our last board meeting, we had 16 cohorts from 11 different campuses quarantined, and about 455 individuals quarantined at that time. So we are seeing a significant increase, and this really is a result of the increased cases that we're seeing. So to give you a rundown on the numbers, and these are the positive and probable cases, and again, remember, probable is either a medical professional has said this is probably COVID, or they have a known exposure and the major symptoms, and they're waiting on a test, and they've lost sense of taste and smell, and dad has COVID. Those are probable cases. So you see that 92 of our 22,000 students have at this point, up to this point, been are active right now as probable or positive or probable cases. So 0.42% of our students, and then 34 of our 3,000-ish staff are positive or probable right now. So 1.13% of our staff. To give you the total numbers, that means that we've had 232 positive or probable cases since August, so since we opened, and 126 are active right now. So we are seeing a significant increase. On October 26th, we only had 23 active cases. So every day is a pretty busy day getting those positive results back. I do want to share with you that there's some things we're seeing in these cases. Most often with the children, they are able to identify a contact with an adult outside of school. They were at a family gathering or a barbecue or a wedding, or dad is positive or mom is positive, in most cases. We do now, having said that, we do have some cases where we don't know the origin of the case. We do have some students like that. But we have a far greater number of cases where they're able to identify an adult who that child had exposure with prior to that child being positive. Many of our staff cases, they also know their exposure, but in some cases they do not know where they might have been exposed. I do have to say that we do continue to quarantine staff for gathering at work on break times or lunchtime and having lunch together, or being outside hanging out on a break, and then one person has COVID and the others end up quarantined. So and in some cases do end up positive. We do have, I think, 3 situations district-wide where we do see staff-to-staff possibility of COVID spread. So I've been sharing this data with you. These are numbers we've been watching very carefully really since we opened, particularly that Weld positivity rate and the Greeley-Evans positivity rate. And then what you see, our positivity rate is 13.01% as of Friday. They had not posted it yet today. They'll post it tomorrow. Indication is it'll stay below 14%, but pop up a little bit here in Weld County based on a meeting I had today with officials from the Weld County Health Department. And then you see that the Greeley-Evans is still just a little bit lower than Weld County's overall positivity rate, but we have surpassed, as we did last week, we have surpassed the statewide positivity rate, which is 10.21%. So I want to just talk about this for a moment, because this has been a piece of a lot of questions, particularly from staff. So you all recall that back in July, I said to you all, health officials are saying if we get to a 10% or higher positivity rate, that is an indicator that we should possibly not be open to in-person learning and we should be remote. I also said if we have over 100 cases per 100,000, that is an indicator that I'm being told we should watch and consider going remote. And that held firm, and I said it over and over in July, August, and September, that those were numbers that could cause us to go remote. What I want to be really clear about is what we didn't have in July, August, and September was school district data and individual school data like we do now. And so health officials today are not saying to us as school districts that if we have a community positivity rate of 10% or higher, or more than 100 cases per 100,000, that we should look to close, because they're watching what's happening in school districts. And what we're seeing is, even after having been open, guys, 12 weeks, we have been open 12 weeks. We are not seeing significant or even minor intra-cohort spread. And so what I mean by that is we are not seeing that within our cohorts, multiple students or staff are getting sick because we are open. And so that the data today, and I'll share it with you, the health experts are saying, look at your local school district data, look at your local school, each school's data, and then look at that within context of your community. And listen to your local health officials. So I continue to work with the Weld County Health Department as we look at this data. I continue to visit with Dr. Mark Wallace as we look at our data. And most indicators say to us that we are not the ones causing the spread. And so actually school, and Dr. Wall said I could say this. He said to me last week, school is still the safest place for kids to be right now, especially the younger kids. And we are seeing a bit of an uptick in high school cases, and I'll talk a little bit about what I think that's about and why. But especially for children, who are not high school age, the safest place still for them is most likely in schools, for families who are choosing in-person learning. And health officials are telling us that. So I know this has been frustrating for some staff, and they've been mad at me about it, and I get it. I'm frustrated too. I'm just as frustrated, I know you are too, that the data and the guidelines and the criteria continue to change. Just last week, we got additional new criteria that I'm going to reference here in just a moment. But as things have been throughout the last 8 months with COVID, the more we learn, the more we adjust and pivot and change. And I want to say I truly am sorry that it can't be cut and dried, that at this point we go remote, or this point we close. And I'm sorry that people thought that I said 10% would be it, and then people assumed no matter what that would mean we would close, because when I look at our data today, we have 10 schools with nobody quarantined, no positive cases. I can't see closing all of those schools because of the worry that we're seeing in our community around what's happening with case rate. So, I wanted to be really frank with you all about that tonight and give you a chance here too when I wrap up to talk and reflect on that, because I think it's a big piece of all of this. we do expect that tomorrow or the next day, we will learn that Weld County has moved to the orange caution level on that statewide dial that CDPHE has published. And so, as that happens, we'll look to see the reaction in our community. We'll see what that means for businesses and what that means for events in our community, and then we'll look to make determinations on, are there changes that we should make in the way that we are operating. So for example, at Orange, they would recommend you consider remote learning if possible. So that does not mean they're saying go to remote learning, but they do recommend we consider remote learning if possible. And so we'll need to consider that. We'll need to look at what's happening in our schools and across the district and what we're seeing in cases. So I think that's enough said about all that for right now. Let's go ahead and talk about what we're learning right now from CDPHE. So last week, this guidance came out from CDPHE. So this is the criteria for school closure that, and it's in this document. I've shared it with you all. You have it. But there's 5 indicators for reasons to close a school. They do not have an indicator for district closure. I want to tell you that. So I think we would have to see several of these things causing schools to close across the district, and then we'd have to determine, do we close the district? But so the first indicator is if we have 5 or more classroom cohort outbreaks within a 14-day period. So this is 2 or more cases within a cohort, in 5 cohorts within a school within 14 days. Now I want to be frank. We're watching Greeley West very carefully because it looked like we might be headed toward this 5 or more classroom cohort outbreaks at Greeley West. In scrubbing that data, we do not meet that threshold, and we've never met that threshold in any of our schools. Then the next area is 5% or more unrelated students, teachers, staff have a confirmed COVID-19 within a 14-day period, with a minimum of 10 unrelated staff in that. So we have not yet hit that 5% of confirmed cases within a 14-day period, with a minimum of 10 unrelated staff. Now, having said that, we have some very small schools where if we get to 4 staff, we may hit that 5% of total staff, but we won't have that minimum of 10 unrelated staff. So we have not hit number 2 yet, but it's something we're watching every single day. The third criteria for school closure is that we need additional time to clean the school before students and staff can return. We're doing a great job. Our custodial team is doing a great job sanitizing, staying up with disinfecting. That has not been an issue for us yet. So that has not been a criteria for us to close any of our schools. The fourth reason is that additional time is needed to gather student, teacher, and staff illness data and confer with public health. So when we very first closed Jackson Elementary School at the beginning of the year, I would say it was really a combination of 4 and 5. We saw what looked to be probable cases among several key staff members in that building, and by key I mean administrative and office, people who see a lot of people. And we needed to close to really stop that spread because we were uncertain of what we had there. And then 5 is the school cannot operate because a large number of students, teachers, or staff are absent. And this is really the one that has caused us throughout the fall, throughout the last 12 weeks, this has been the reason we have had to close because of the number of folks who get quarantined, and then you just can't keep the operations going. So this is the new criteria, the latest criteria, I shouldn't say new, the latest criteria, and it's certainly criteria that we are following here in the district.
Clarifying question.
Go ahead, Natalie.
When it says outbreak, that
can't
means
hear.
2 or more or 3 or more?
2 or more. 2 or more, yeah. So I do want to share that today we learned from the Weld County Health Department that CDPHE has published data just today on a white paper on school outbreak and school spread. The entire of Weld County has not had any confirmed outbreaks within their school. So actually the health department was kind of singing our praises as Weld County superintendents today that it looks like we're doing, the protocols are working, we're doing the right thing, that we've been fortunate to not have any school outbreaks here in Weld County. Again, remember that's 13 school districts in a very large area. Then we received additional guidance from CDPHE, and I've got a link in there for you guys, but you've seen this as well. But in this guidance, they have identified pre-K through 12 in-person learning as part of a critical business definition. So what this means is that we are a critical business for consideration on that CDPHE dial. And then, so what this also clarified that each district will decide the structure and format of education based on those local factors. So, this is an important piece. I think that the governor and CDPHE were making a stance that schools should be open if we can be, that we should be open. We're a critical business. And so we were included in that critical business definition, I believe, for that reason. Now, to be clear, I have a Zoom conference later this week with the governor, folks from CDE and CDPHE. So we'll learn more at that meeting about kind of the state of the state from the governor and CDPHE. So then, going remote. If we end up going remote, fully district-wide, the numbers are indicating that we should go fully remote, then I want to let you know that we've been working really hard on internet solutions for all families. The Success Foundation and JBS have come together to provide internet for families through paying the Internet Essentials. So the Success Foundation had already raised $5,000. JBS has dedicated $50,000 to start with their families first, meaning employees of JBS who have children in our district who need internet. But I believe they'll also support district-wide once they know they've met the needs of their employees and their children. We do have, but we're still working through that, but we're getting much closer to making sure that every child and every family has internet access. reliable internet access. We have developed a plan to have learning pods for childcare or for supervision, study supervision. That we will use 8 school sites with staff who are not certified teachers at those sites, and we'll have pods of 15 or fewer children in a classroom. They'll be designed for elementary students, and so that we can allow families on a first-come, first-served basis to be able to send their students into a school, at least to be supervised. They will not be with their teacher. They will be supervised with their device with them, and they'll still be learning remotely, as will the rest of the students in the district, if we come to that. We think this is also a way to help to keep our hourly employees working and paid. So we're working on job descriptions so that once we know we would be moving in this direction, we will have identified those staff in our district who can't work remotely, and who want to continue to work and can help support the learning pod work and to support those sites. If we do go fully remote, there'll be high expectations for engagement. I want to reiterate again, it'll look very different than last spring, where we had some instructional time and then independent time and office hours for teachers. This will be a full day of instruction. We'll move the brick and mortar schedule over into a virtual environment, and students and staff will be expected to be at a high level of engagement every single day. We will provide transportation to those learning pods. What the team today shared was that we'll either provide transportation straight from areas where there's pretty condensed housing to the school that those children would be assigned to go to if their parents elect to have them in the learning pod. And then we'll also run transportation from the school sites that are not offering the learning pods, so that if you can get to your school site, you can jump on a bus to get to the learning pod. We will continue to provide meals. The transportation department will help us to distribute those meals and make sure we get meals out into the community to our students. The question of building utilization, and I think it goes to your question, Ms. Mueller, of would I be able to be in my building, in my classroom? So in those classrooms where we're using learning pods, those classrooms will be tied up. So those teachers would not have access to those classrooms. And that's one of their classrooms. The other piece is if we actually go fully remote and shut down because of significant community spread, it could be that health officials are recommending, and that we're recommending, that staff not come into any of our sites unless they're there for the critical business of being in the learning pod. So I just don't know. I know I've heard from teachers too, they want access to their classrooms. So we want to be able to do that if it's safe to do that. Our teachers have to demonstrate that they can. I mean, most of them are very good about the 6 feet and wearing masks and all that. And we do have folks quarantined because they were eating lunch together or went out after work together. And if we close because we're trying to stop the spread, we got to stop those things too to stop the spread. But I think people are learning and figuring it out, and we'll get better at all of that. Extracurricular activities, there's been a question about will they be allowed, and it's kind of the same thing as can I have access to my building. If we go remote because we don't have enough folks to operate and our functions, and it's not because we're quarantining thousands of staff and students, then it's very likely we could continue extracurricular activities. If we go remote because of the numbers of folks who are positive for COVID, who are students and staff, or because of significant intra-cohort spread across the district, then we may need to cancel extracurricular activities. So what I wanted to say about this, when I referenced this earlier, is, it's been great to have the activity start up again. But if you are positive and you are a student in marching band, and you're positive, your cohort gets quarantined, all of your teachers get quarantined, and the marching band gets quarantined. The marching band people you worked with, they get quarantined. Same with football. Football coach gets COVID and they're a teacher, their classes get quarantined. The football team they work with gets quarantined. So I think that is why we are seeing some increase in the number of positive cases at the high school level, because we've opened up activities and there's just more opportunity for spread. And I think it's been worth it, because it's many parents and students are grateful to have those extracurriculars going. But I do think it's contributed probably to more cases and more quarantine at the high school level. So with that, I think we'll turn the slides off. I'll look here at my table and see if there's anything else I meant to say that I didn't get a chance to say. And if I didn't, I'm sure your questions will bring it out for me. So why don't we just open it up for questions and comments at this time?
Dr. Peltz, I believe Ms. Elise has a question.
So with all this new information, what has been the best way to communicate that to staff and then also to community?
That's a great question, Ms. Elise, and I'll take any advice you might have. We did a communication the last 2 Fridays in a row. So we sent one out a Friday ago to update staff and update for staff. And then we did a communication this past Friday for students and staff along with that survey. We are planning to do a communication each week now up to the Thanksgiving break. So, and we may do a video. We've talked about the next communication possibly being just a short video from me. I will tell you, I've been in meetings and I just know folks haven't had a chance to read the communication because they're asking questions about things that have been shared. So I know people are overwhelmed and busy, so we're trying to figure out the best way to communicate. I mean, one of the things I said early on, I think it was Ms. Mash had asked about a weekly communication, and I said, I don't want people to stop reading our communications. And we hadn't communicated probably for 3 weeks, 2 weeks at least, 3 weeks, and I don't know that people read it. So I hope people will continue to read them. We're posting them on on our district website after we do it. So I think, we have them there for people. I mean, I'll take any advice you have around communication, because it is so important, and it's one of the hardest things about all of this.
Mr. Talley.
I have a question about if we do go remote, is there a different plan, an intentional plan for our students who are more high needs or high risk?
Yeah, there is for our students who qualify for special education services. So yes, there is a plan for that, and a more intense plan for that for those students, and a priority. So we've developed a algorithm basically to give priority for going remote, and so students with who are identified receiving special services, and then is a priority, but also for staff, our own staff, their children would have a priority as well for a place in the learning pod.
And then the numbers that you did show us, those include charter schools, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then my last question, are we collaborating with UNC for closures or what their numbers look like?
I'm in contact with Dr. Feinstein and Dr. Bornstein, both UNC and Ames, and we're sharing information with each other, but I don't know that we are making a collaborative decision together. I think it's just very different work and very different populations, and so I don't, I appreciate my partnership with both of them, and I respect them tremendously, and I don't think it's like a snow day where we would work to maybe make the same call because of weather. We just serve such different populations.
I have one more question, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, it's been in my mind, I'm trying to figure out how to say it without sounding like I'm disrespecting anyone, because that is not my intention. But I've been hearing from some of the community members, they have concerns and worries around sort of where our county officials stood with the whole COVID at the beginning, and all of that, and how they stand now. So their concerns are they taking it serious now, or are they kind of fluffing it up, pushing it under the rug, and how are we handling that?
Yeah, so no, I think that's fair, Ray, Mr. Talley, and I will just say this, that we've got officials at the county that we're working directly with who are not, who report to the county commissioners, but they are working cooperatively with us. I have a weekly meeting with other Weld County superintendents, with folks from the health department, the Weld County Health Department, and we're also talking with other physicians in our community and other health officials, and we're watching the state data. You know, I don't. Quite frankly, CDPHE came out with the guidance to guide us on what criteria we should be looking at for closing a school. So, you know, I didn't need that from Weld County. But I think, you know, they've been great about getting us data. They're providing us that weekly data report that is by data by district and breaks the data down for 5 to 19-year-olds. And so, you know, I feel like we are getting good cooperation. And I understand the politics of the commissioner saying we're open for business, and what does that mean for schools? But truly, this is a local school board decision, and we make that decision about schools. So I feel fine, and I think you can share that with people that we feel like we're getting the guidance that we need from plenty of folks, and that our board is well informed, and you're smart people. You're dialed into the community. You're listening to your constituents. I mean, you all don't need someone else to make this decision for you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pappas.
So I actually have two big areas, and the first one is just with parents. So one thing that I have heard, and I think others may have heard too, is just the frustration with the consistency of we're in person, we're remote now we're in person and remote, just that process. So I guess that's just one issue that I don't know that it can be addressed at all. But what I am wondering is, what options do parents have? So, for example, if I'm one of those students who lives in an area where there's not necessarily any internet access right now, and my class goes remote learning, and I'm working all day, and so my child is now home doing remote learning. Do I have other options now? Do I have options of, I guess what options do I have as a parent? Now, you've talked about the learning pods if we go district-wide remote.
Yeah, we don't have an option like that right now when we quarantine. I will say this, there are a few sites that do bring in a few students with very specific needs. If they like Jefferson High School, they closed the entire school because they didn't have the staff, and so they had, you know, over 200 kids who were not quarantined, and so some students were allowed to come in and work in the building as a result of that. So we've tried to do some of that when we can. We just are not set up to offer a child supervision program when we quarantine. We're just not. We don't have the resources to do that. But we will if we go fully remote. I will tell you this, that as schools have gone remote, as a cohort goes out, that the first thing that individual teacher does is work with that family and that each of their families and students to ensure they have internet access and to help them to get to internet access. We are still deploying hotspots. Now, if you're in an area where a cell phone doesn't work, a hotspot's not going to work either. There is the opportunity to come into the libraries, is my understanding as well. They're open, but you know, this has been a big part of why we've needed to stay open, because not everybody has what they need at home to be able to learn remotely.
Right, which is why I support the decision to be in person. I think that's really important, and I think it's important for our community to understand when people are saying, why don't you just go remote right now? I think people need to understand that the decisions that you're making based on this guidance, it has a huge impact on many of our families. Because if I have even 3 or 4 kids in a small space, we have a lot of poverty in our district. And that makes that remote learning that much more difficult without access to many resources. And so we can say, yeah, they can go to a library, they can go here. That's not always possible, especially if the parents are working and kids are home. So I just want to bring that out, that people need to remember that. And that's one of the reasons that we decided to go in person. So thank you for that.
I should have said, Ms. Pappas, that there's also are cases where we will just deliver materials to the home if there's no way to get the child onto internet.
And that was my other question. Do
Yeah,
they have
but it-
access to resources
yeah.
if that's not
Right,
possible?
but you know, that's not a great solution for 20,000 kids.
No,
You got to have internet.
right.
You got to have internet.
So then on the flip side of that, and this, I don't know how related this is, but at the beginning of the year, we had parents make a decision, in person or remote. I'm also hearing that now a lot of parents are saying, okay, I did choose the remote learning, but now I'd really like to go in person. So is that having an impact? Are we still accepting kids now? What about, how does that impact class size?
We are, and Mr. Tuttle just shared with me late this afternoon that we have, I think, 10 classes that are over 25 now in the district, and so keep in mind, you know, we have hundreds of classes. So we're still able to, we've been able to really try to keep that class size down under 25 in most cases. I mean, I'm looking across at numbers and I'm seeing K-8, I'm seeing lots of very favorable numbers, far better than we've ever had in our schools. But we're working really closely with those families to, if coming back into brick and mortar is a good fit, or families who are uncomfortable staying in brick and mortar, possibly leaving and going to full remote. So it's very elegant work, and our administrators and teachers are working really hard to figure out, you know, what is the best fit. And in some cases, a family will just, you know, it's their first quarantine they've seen, and so it's scary, and they think that everybody, all 30 kids who were sent home are positive for COVID, or all 60 kids who are quarantined are positive for COVID. And so part of it is just, you know, staff at the building having a conversation with the family and really helping them to understand what the numbers mean and reassuring them about having their children in school.
Thank you. And then just shifting over to the teacher side of it, I mean, I am just thinking about this time of year anyway and how overwhelming it can be, and conversations we've had about teacher responsibilities. And I know that we're asking teachers to do some of that extra cleaning and washing hands, all of those things that happen now that didn't happen before, that adds that additional level of responsibility and expectations. Mm-hmm. So with that, I'm wondering, and also keeping in mind that we did get, I can't remember what curriculum we adopted this year. I don't know if for elementary, I think it might have been, well, science. So I'm just wondering how we're supporting teachers in that, and is there any other update on state assessment so that we can know that our teachers are going to school every day and doing the best that they can do, but they don't have that additional.
It's a great point,
stress.
Ms. Pappas. I will tell you, we were on with a couple different principals this weekend at planning, and I brought this up, and you know, the principal said, "Oh no, we aren't having regular staff meetings. We're not." And they said that they've said to Wes and Anthony both that working in Zoom has been more efficient with staff meetings and things, so they've not had to spend as much time doing some of those meeting things they would have done, where you kind of waste some time walking in and chatting each other up, and you know, whereas in Zoom people are there's a strict protocol, and so it seems to be a little more efficient. But I hear you, you know, and we have to keep doing the work of the district and ensure that students are learning. We do. So it's, you know, when we can, we're taking things off people's plates, but the work of the district has to continue as well, and kids have to be learning, and that takes time and energy and work. In terms of state assessments, there's no word yet. The superintendent's group that I'm a part of, with the Denver area superintendents, we are most likely going to pursue the governor around the state assessments and the legislature, rather than even trying to work with the state board. So we are all in agreement, as is the Pikes Peak Council of Superintendents, that this is not the year to do state assessments. Kids need that instructional time. How would we ever get kids who are remote to come in and do the state tests? So it's just not the year to do it. But we're not getting any traction with the State Department. They've kind of held firm that we have to do it. I think we bantered the idea last week about, well, what if we just said no? What if we just don't? But funding's attached to that and all kinds of things, so that's probably not an option. But we do think working straight with the governor's office and and our legislators is the best way to address the state assessment piece.
Well, I appreciate that, and I too. I mean, our job is teaching students, and academic achievement is one of our major goals.
Yeah.
And just as I appreciate the work that we're continuing to do on Innovation 2030, it's important to keep that focus area in schools as well. I just appreciate the fact that you're taking as many things off their plates as we can, and just the support that administrators and you all are giving teachers.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we have to have teachers still standing. I mean,
Right.
They are the ones who do the work.
Right.
So we have to have them still standing. I know there was a question that had come forward about temperature taking, and is that something we could stop doing because it's one more thing teachers are doing in the morning? We did float that out there with some of our teams. I talked with our association president about it. There's a pretty strong feeling that the temperature taking is important. We do have students who come in with fevers and are identified and excluded from school because of a fever who showed up with a fever. So it is working, and I think from the Teachers Association perspective, what Ms. Lee shared with me is, it's a protocol that's in place. Our protocols seem to be working, and cases are going up. It doesn't seem like the right time to take protocols away. So I don't expect we'll be moving away from stopping temperature taking.
Thank you.
Ms. Mesh.
Well, that is actually a segue into what I wanted to ask about. So I really appreciated all of the data that you have presented to us, and just really thought about how it is frustrating that we can't just have here's the plan.
Ms. Mesh, can you speak into the microphone? Thank you.
Here's the plan, here's the numbers, we're going to do everything exactly. I have experienced that so much as a nurse in these last months of the criteria for testing has changed, how we are doing the testing has changed. We're going to this, then we're going to that. My instruction sheets there for my patients, just so many details that have to work out, and they have to change as we learn more. And I think that educating our children is based so much on data, and that is the way that we should make decisions, is based on data. So we have 12 weeks of data that we are not spreading our virus in our schools. So even though it feels like the cases are going up, we can't go back on anything. I am just wondering, since we have this data, we're not spreading it through cohorts, do we have to cohort so many people?
Yes.
Time?
Oh, you mean quarantine? Not
Quarantine.
Cohort.
No, we should cohort, but
The quarantine.
we are
Yeah.
sending home 35 kids and 3 staff members,
Yeah.
and not one more person is getting sick. Is that necessary?
So we've actually have softened that a little bit, where we are now using the distance rule. So if they were in masks and they were not within 10 feet of each other for more than 30 minutes, they're not quarantining. So we have lessened that. We are not able to use that rule at elementary unless it's a very strict elementary setting, like a self-contained program with very few students and kids don't leave their seats. But at the secondary, we have been able to do that. And that has helped some. On school buses, we're able to use the 10-foot rule and masks. One of the things that has really hung us up, that has still sent a lot of kids home, is lunch. So if the kids all had their mask off, eating lunch, and that staff member was positive, or if one student is positive and the staff member had their mask off or was close to that student at some point, even with a mask on for more than 15 minutes, they're getting quarantined. So lunch is still causing a lot of quarantines, because eating is one of the more germ-spreading activities, or COVID-spreading activities, yeah.
Does our data still show that we're not spreading it, though, amongst those lunch cohorts?
For the most part, our data shows we are not spreading this intra-cohort, but these aren't guidelines that we came up with. They're the guidelines from CDPHE. And so there are several school districts that have put data together to demonstrate to CDPHE that there is not the significant intra-cohort spread they thought there would be, and that when kids are quarantined, we're not seeing significant numbers of kids and staff getting sick during that quarantine period. So we'll keep watching that data. I think this next week is going to be really important. I think what we're seeing this weekend, we saw what I would consider a spike in cases, probably a dozen or so positives on Saturday and Sunday. And so we're probably seeing the result, the health department said today, we're probably seeing the results of Halloween. So we'll continue to see what, if numbers of children are positive and maybe asymptomatic, then I think we would begin to see additional cases, even another spike next week as we go into cases. So we'll continue to watch that. I don't think we will be given reprieve on that guidance, especially as our community moves to orange on the state dial. I think, if anything, our restrictions will probably get stricter rather than be lightened up.
Well, I think just as it seems to be our goal and our opinion that the schools need to stay open, that we're closing because we have cohorts out on quarantine, but not because we have a lot of sick people. And
so far that does seem to be more the case.
Yeah.
Mr. Hafley.
First of all, thanks to you and your staff for staying on top of this. I can't imagine the amount of information that you're bombarded with, and you always do a great job of sharing with us. So thanks to all of you. One of the things, maybe following the survey and using the PowerPoint that you just presented, maybe you could have another town hall or a mandated district staff meeting to share this information, and then have each of the buildings share their questions with their principals and see if the principals can answer the questions, and if not, send it to the appropriate person. So we're addressing those things to the best of our ability. But I think that, again, I agree with everybody, the more information, the better. I agree with Ms. Pappas in that, we keep adding things to plates and people are becoming more and more stressed, and anything that our administrators can remove and be aware of socially, emotionally, I think would be greatly appreciated. The last one is, I don't know if I need a response, but there are people when we are having buildings that we're having a reduction of staff, essentially, they're being mandated and forced to sub, and that creates more undue pressure on them, and they're not very happy about it. And then some have made the comment that, all of a sudden I'm going into new cohorts and we're not supposed to even allow people in the buildings, and they're very, very confused by that. And we have district people coming into sub, and there's, like you said, there's contradictions, and we now have data to address those things. But I think that we just need to be cognizant that those things are occurring. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hafley. Yes, that is occurring. I don't know that anybody's being mandated to cover. I think staff, I know staff may refuse to cover. Now, having said that, most staff are not going to refuse, because they know by covering they're keeping their school open, and most of our staff want to keep schools open. So I don't have a good solution for that other than closing schools. We do have to rely on staff to help cover. We do have to send district staff out to cover, whether it's covering offices or covering lunch shifts or recess duty or covering classes. We are having to do that, and it does break the cohort some at that point. We are not seeing additional virus spread as a result of doing that. If we do, we'll have to address that. What we are seeing is that those staff end up getting quarantined if there's another case in that cohort, and they're out there subbing either from within their building or subbing from the district office, that they do at times end up quarantined because they were in a cohort where there was a positive or a presumed positive. But yes, I will acknowledge that is happening, and there is not a solution to that other than choosing to close the school. So we're just working really hard to keep schools open for as long as we can. I like the idea of possibly doing another town hall. I don't think we have a professional development time where we can actually mandate attendance at it, but we could certainly work hard to encourage people, or I think Friday was our last district-wide professional development day for this semester. So.
Thank you.
We did push out, I should say, a slideshow last week with principals with additional information of kind of what's shifted since the beginning of the year to now for principals to share with teachers. So I'm hoping that was helpful for teachers also, kind of the change in the 3 foot to 10 foot and quarantined, not quarantined, allowing kids to work together, some of that stuff.
Ms. Mueller.
So one of the questions I had was, in this survey, did you ask any questions about social emotional wellness for students and parents?
I don't think we asked a specific social emotional wellness question. However, there is open-ended questions about what else. We did ask, what other support do you need, or what other support do your children need? Okay. We did ask that.
So I have heard from some parents, and I am a parent of a college student, and I will tell you that we are hearing, of course, from our college students that, remote learning is just not the same. You may learn as much, maybe academically, but there is that social emotional piece that cannot be fully fulfilled through a computer screen and through remote learning. And so what I'm hearing is that kids want to be in school. They do. And maybe we as adults and educators say, well, they just don't understand the risk, or they don't understand the threat. But there are other threats to our children's well-being and growth and development than this horrible social distancing based virus. And that is their ability to develop interactions with their peers, to work collaboratively, to have friendships. And so I think there's a part of that we have to also consider. I think that, and I totally get where teachers are coming from and the changing rules. That I live with that too. I teach face-to-face as well, and I'm one of the few faculty on campus that do still teach face-to-face, and it is hard. I mean, we hear all the time about, we've got students and the community at large that seem to think still we're going to close down after Thanksgiving. UNC is remaining open after Thanksgiving. I have not heard otherwise. And so it's challenging because the communication sometimes is also just fueled by misperception. But there's a reason that we are doing this. And the reason is the learning is richer and better and deeper. The communication with one another, I appreciate with what Ms. Solis said. Once you get it down and you figure out the way to clean and you figure out the way to mask up, you can do this. And it's hard, but I really do believe the face-to-face learning is richer and deeper and more meaningful. And that I think that you and your staff have done everything you can to ensure that we're following the data. I appreciate what Ms. Mash said. But I admit a bias, and that is this. My students want to be in class. And I think our district students want to be in class. And I think that the one thing I forgot to mention when I had my original comments, the other thing that these teachers have said is that there have been very few behavioral problems. That our administrators are not dealing with a lot of behavioral problems. And I don't know if that's actually true, if that's just anecdotal, but if that's true, that says something to me about the intention of our students. They want to be in school. And I think we need to try and find a way to honor that as best we can. And so I guess that's my question. Also, besides the social emotional piece, is that true that we just aren't encountering a lot of behavioral problems this semester?
I think there is some truth to that. We have, one of the things I think, the mask keeps a lot of things from happening. But I think that's accurate with what we've seen so far. I know I've not seen stuff come across my desk at the rate it has in the past. Yes, they're all nodding their heads yes. So I think that is true. Part of it, too, is much smaller class sizes. So we have half of our high school students in a campus at a time. That is a big deal, when you have only half of your students there at a high school. Our high schools were so overcrowded. That's a lot of bodies bumping around in our high school hallways and things. We also have fewer transitions during the day. Kids don't have as many passing periods at middle school and high school. I mean, I think there's lots of reasons that I could probably line up why student discipline would be down. And I do think it's accurate. Ms. Myers, were you looking to see if something on the survey?
There's not a specific question.
Yeah, I didn't think there was.
There is an open-ended question about what else do your children need.
Yeah. There's no question that the social emotional is, on our radar, and high level awareness about that and about what that means for students and staff during this time. So thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Not seeing any. We're running short on time, Dr. Piltz, so I will just say thank you to all the work, and I know it's tremendous, from teachers and administrators and your staff here in this building. So I can just speak for my kids. I can tell you their demeanor. I don't think they would have ever said that, and they might not say it now, that they love school, but having missed it for March and April and May, and knowing that it could go away, they get up every day knowing that this is not their, that every day is a gift. Every day that they get to go to school, even if they still love the snow days, and part of them would love to stay home and not do anything except play video games. Intuitively, they know this is where they need to be, and I think they approach it that way. And Ms. Mueller, I think we absolutely see that just in the demeanor and the attitudes of our kids. So again, that's anecdotal, but that's what we see. So thank you for keeping us open 12 weeks. We appreciate it. Next item is our community engagement, and this is just where we'll open it up to board members. Again, this, like our calendar, it's very difficult to have community engagement right now, but something we don't want to lose sight of or lose track of. And so are there questions or comments from board members? Ms. Solis.
I know I mentioned this before because I've spoken to a council member for the city of Evans, but if we can share our slides, or just at least a couple of them that show the criteria for us closing and kind of what our numbers are, I think if we can share that again with city council members and just keeping them up to date and reminding them that what we're doing is working, so maybe that gives them some ideas on what to do at a city level or to encourage at a city level. I know that, some of our stuff that we're doing is kind of, a little bit over, and that's a little frustrating. And I know that I still see a lot of community members not wearing masks. I have a gym right next to where I work. There is no one that wears a mask there. And I get comments all the time when they come into my office that, you guys do realize there's no one next door wearing masks? So that stuff is still happening in communities. So anything that we can share with the city of Greeley and city of Evans to let them know what's happening in our district, and maybe they can share that with their constituents and maybe help push that mask wearing in all areas in the cities.
Any others from board members on community engagement, how we engage the community? Well, we do appreciate all of our community partners. It takes a village to do this. And so our last item before dinner is to debrief the work session. And so we'll start with Ms. Mash and move this way.
Thank you for the very detailed update on all of the numbers, and I appreciate hearing everyone's various constituents that they've heard from. Seems like we all receive different information from different portions of the community, so I think that's good. We're all in different I guess, circles, so we hopefully can get a broad view of what our community is thinking. And thank you so much to all of our teachers and staff and administrators who have worked so hard these last 12 weeks, and I hope that we can continue.
Mr. Talley?
It's always great to get updates, COVID updates. As I was sitting here, it just got me thinking, I work, and thank you for bringing it up. I work in a social emotional learning school. That is what our school is based around. And all of our students in our school have a social emotional disability. And I know the important work that comes around being a staff member in the school. I also know the stress and the worry and the fear that staff members in a school environment, not only teachers, but office staff and administrators are facing every day when they walk into the school building. So I want to say to our staff members in the district that it's okay to feel failure, and it's okay to feel overwhelmed, and it's okay to feel sad, and it's okay to feel like you just can't do it anymore. Because I feel you. I feel that some days are better than others, but we all have good intentions, and we all know why we do the work we do, and it's because we love the students that we have. And so I just encourage every staff member out there to take care of yourself. Take a day if you need a day. Take a weekend if you need a weekend, and really take care of yourself. Do something enjoyable that is non-stressful, so you can really unplug and just have a good time. And I sit here and say that, and I'm very hypocritical because I need to also do that. But I really do encourage that, and as well for your administrative cabinet, I hope, Dr. Pilch, that you and your team, I hope you guys are taking days and taking weekends to take care of yourselves and doing something that is non-stressful, because I know even if you say you're taking a day, you're still working and still staying busy. So I encourage everyone out there to please take care of yourselves. We are coming into a season now that is historically and statistically shows that depression and anxiety go up in the winter months. And so please take care of yourselves. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Talley. Ms. Pappas?
Well, that is exactly what I was going to say. So thank you, Mr. Talley. But seriously, I do believe that, and I think that this is just an exhausting, overwhelming time for everyone. And I do appreciate what earlier when you said, Dr. Pilch, that at the end of the day, we need our teachers standing. At the end of the day, we need everyone standing. So thank you, Mr. Talley, for sharing my thoughts as well.
Great minds think alike.
Great minds.
Ms. Solis?
I'm just grateful for all the information. It's a lot. COVID fatigue is real. COVID depression is real. And I think everyone can pick a time during this process that we've all felt that overwhelmed feeling and not doing enough, or am I doing this right, or should I be doing more? That's definitely out there. So thank you, Ray, for bringing that up and reminding people to do self-care. That's really important. And, I'm just, as a board member, this has been so difficult, expecting teachers to do what they do, administrators to do what they do. Kids have been resilient. They've been great wearing masks and doing what they need to do. But it is hard. It is hard. And, hopefully everyone understands that we are hearing you. We get it. We see it. We feel it. And, we're trying to do our best through this, and really encouraging community members. It is important that our kids are in school. I appreciate Pepper mentioning that. It means a lot to them. It means a lot to their little psyches and little souls. And so anything that we can do to help, and that includes us as community members and masking up in the outside times, when we're in stores, when we're at gatherings, and being very conscious of who we are gathering with and how many people there are. And so I'm hoping that, those conversations continue district outwards, and that we keep that in mind. I know I work at a small business, and it means a lot to me to be able to stay open. We were closed for a month and a half. And I know that the only way that we're going to be able to stay open is if everyone else does what they need to do too. And so this really affects everyone. So if we want businesses to stay open, if we want kids to be in school, teachers to feel safer, we all need to do our part. So just really reiterating that to community and our friends, our family, social media, all of those things, because we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. This is a tough thing, and I wish it was just like an ordinary flu. That would be so much easier, and it's not. And just when we think that we have it figured out, we don't. And just when we think that the COVID is this and this and this, it transitions to some other symptoms. So it's going to be here for a while. So we just need to encourage each other and support each other. So thank you to my board members. I know this has been hard for you too. It's a lot. And I know you care about a lot of people, especially within the district, and you care about kids. And so just know that I'm thinking of you, and we're in this together.
Thank you, Ms. Solis. Mr. Hafley.
Mr. Talley, thank you very much for your service. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Congratulations again, Ms. Crane. Thank you to all of our staff for the incredible job they do daily on behalf of our students, their families, in our communities. And thanks to Dr. Pilch and all the administration for your continued hard work. And I'm very grateful and thankful for each of the board members. Your insight and passion is always unmatched, and it's always wonderful to come to our meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Hafley. And Ms. Mueller.
Well, Dr. Pilch, I appreciate your very thorough report on coronavirus at every meeting. But I have to admit, I look forward to the day when you don't have to give us a report on the coronavirus and how it's impacting our district. And I know that everybody feels that way, and that's just the nature of where we are. I want to thank our teachers and administrators and our school staff. You are going way above and beyond what was expected when you got your teaching degrees and you started working at schools and you started cleaning schools and driving buses. This is not the job you signed up for, and I appreciate how everyone stepped up. And we do feel how hard you're working. But I have to say selfishly, I want coronavirus to go away because I miss going into the schools. I so want to go see our schools and our teachers and our students. And in lieu of that, I want to make a shout out to Teresa and her communications team, because right now I am living virtually through Facebook. And the posts you have about the different events going on with the different schools, to our unified team, and the news about that at Greeley Central was great news to see, to the mock election that was occurring. I can't remember what school that was at. These are stories that show how resilient our students are and how resilient our teachers and staff are. And I really appreciate you putting that out there into the social network, because that is the best news about how good our district can be in light of all of these obstacles. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. We're at time, guys, so I'll just say thank you for a great meeting. As always, great questions from board members. As always, great answers from Dr. Pilch. Thank you for those in that update. For those of us, or those of you watching us online, we'll be back at 6 o'clock, but we're going to take a break until then. Thank you.